Hi, welcome to my channel and thank you to my subscribers. If you have not already subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. In this video, we are going to see how to customize an ID token that is generated by the Cognito user pool. And in many of the videos in the past, I have posted how to add different SAML identity providers to a Cognito user pool like AzureAD, Okta, Keycloak, Ping Federate. So let's see how to customize an ID token that is generated by the Cognito user pool so that we can add some custom claims to the ID token, which can then be used by the client application to perform various authorization logic. So in order to customize the ID token that is generated by the Cognito user pool actually provides multiple Lambda triggers. So this is the documentation of the Cognito user pool Lambda triggers. You can search in Google and find this page. And here you can see the list of Lambda triggers that are available in a Cognito user pool. So what we are going to do is we are going to use one of these triggers to customize the ID token, and that is this one, which is the pre-token generation Lambda trigger. So you can go through this documentation at a later point of time, but you can see that this trigger is actually used to customize an ID token before the Cognito user pool generates that token. So you can basically add a new claim to the ID token. You can update a claim. You can suppress a claim, which is basically like delete the claim from the ID token so that it doesn't show up in the JWT. So you can do many things. You can write some kind of a business logic which reads some data from a DynamoDB or some other database, and then gets that data and adds that data into the ID token claim. So you can perform lots of different business logic within this Lambda trigger. So it is a very handy tool or like kind of a trigger that is available in the user pool to customize your ID token. And you can go through this entire documentation at a later point of time, but we are going to see just a simple use case where we can use this ID token customization, and so that a client application can then perform different business logic based on that custom claim. So I'm not going to go through the entire setup. So in the past, I have posted some videos where you can add AzureAD as a SAML identity provider or a OIDC identity provider in Cognito user pool, and this was the diagram that I showed in that video. And you can see the video here where I'm showing how to add AzureAD as a SAML identity provider, and there is also another video where it shows how to add. If I go back, there is a video where I show how to add AzureAD as a OIDC identity provider. Yeah, this is the one. How to add Microsoft AzureAD as a OIDC identity provider. So it doesn't really matter. Like you can either add AzureAD as a SAML identity provider to your user pool or AzureAD as a OIDC identity provider to the user pool, because in this video we are going to see how to customize the ID token that is generated by Cognito user pool, and we will see the use case while testing it. But you can follow one of these videos, either SAML or the OIDC video, to add AzureAD as an identity provider in Cognito user pool. I will even share these links in the description so that it is easier for you to do that end-to-end setup. So I have already done that setup in this particular user pool, which I had already created. So I have already added AzureAD as an identity provider using OIDC protocol. Again, as I said, it doesn't matter whether it's a SAML or OIDC. So you can follow one of those videos to add AzureAD as an identity provider in your Cognito user pool. And that is already done here. So this user pool, I have created an application client. You can see it here. And this application client supports both identity providers, that is the Cognito user pool directory, as well as AzureAD identity provider. So which basically means I can either log in to the application client either using my AzureAD user credentials or my local Cognito user pool credentials. So let's actually test both the cases here. So copy this, right click this view hosted UI and copy the link address. I'm going to open a different browser, which is Mozilla browser. I will clean up all the cookies and let's open this. So let's first try to log in using AzureAD IDP. So click that button and it will initiate a federation with AzureAD IDP. So I need a user for this AzureAD IDP. So I'm going to use one of these users. So let me actually copy this user ID. Go here. Let me try to sign. It didn't work. Let me try a different password. Yes, it worked. So now I was able to successfully sign in using this AzureAD identity provider, and you can see all the claims here, like the user's family name, user's given name, full name, email address, all those details here. And if you go back to this Cognito user pool, you can see a user profile created for that AzureAD user here. And here also you can see all the details like given name, family name, email address, and full name. So we are able to successfully log in using the AzureAD user here. Now let's test the other use case where I can log in using a local user profile that is created within this user pool. So let's go back here, clear all the cookies, and let's actually create a new user profile in this user pool. I will name it as test user 1. So I have already configured a user called test user 1. Let me actually edit and add the full name, given name. I will even add a dummy email address and save the changes. Now again go back to that same app client integration tab, click that app client, copy the view hosted UI link address, go to Mozilla. Since I already cleared all the cookies, it should again show the login page. Yeah, it showed the login page. Now let me log in using that test user 1. I hope it's the same password. Yes. So let me use that same password. So I was able to log in successfully using user profile, and I can see the given name, the name that I configured, the family name, email address, all those things. So now I'm able to log in using both the AzureAD user profile as well as the local user profile that was created in this Cognito user pool. So now let's go on to the next step of customizing this ID token that is generated for both AzureAD user profile as well as the local user profile. In order to customize the ID token, go to pool properties, click add Lambda trigger, and we are going to customize the ID token. So if you look at the sign up trigger type, there are only 3 triggers that are available for sign up. So this cannot be used for customizing an ID token. So select this authentication, and here you will see this pre-token generation trigger. Now let's go ahead and create a new Lambda function. And let's create a new function, name it as custom Cognito claims. Let's use the same Node.js runtime. Click create function. So we have a blank Node.js function here. So let's go to the documentation, the Cognito documentation, and if you scroll down, you will see the source code, a sample source code. So copy that, click this button to copy the source code, come here and replace this function and click deploy. So now if you look at the source code, what it is basically doing is it is adding couple of claims to the ID token, and it is actually suppressing the email claim. Okay, so if you look at this ID token, there is an email claim. So this should get removed. Next time when I log in, it should get removed, and 2 additional claims should get added to this ID token. So, but before doing that, let's go back to this Cognito user pool screen, refresh, and select that function. So it's called custom Cognito claims. So all the Lambda functions are displayed here, but I need to select this one because this is the one I created now, and click add Lambda. Now again go back to app integration tab, select that view hosted UI. Just make sure the cookies are cleared. I already cleared it. Now let's log in. So let's log in using my local user credentials and see if those additional claims are present. Yeah, you can see it here. My first attribute, my second attribute. And I don't see the email claim here because it got suppressed. So if you look at suppressed, so let's do one thing. Let's code that suppress claims to suppress, deploy, and let's try to log in again. Again, clear the cookies, log in as the test user one. Now I can see those 2 additional attributes, my first attribute, my second attribute, as well as email. So if I log in using AzureAD, I should still see all these 3 things for the AzureAD profile. So click next, sign in. And I can see all the 3 attributes. My first attribute, the identities array, and the email address. Now let's do some addition modifications here just to enhance this use case. Okay. So first you need to understand what is present in this event object. So let's actually print this event object and see what is present in this event object. So in order to do this, add this console.log statement, deploy it, go to monitor and click view CloudWatch logs. These debug statements printed in the CloudWatch logs for that particular Lambda function. So let's actually test it out. So this is the CloudWatch logs for that Lambda function. You can see the path here, AWS Lambda custom Cognito claims. So it is easier to navigate here by clicking the view CloudWatch logs, or you can directly go to the CloudWatch console and select a particular log stream. So now again, let's log in and see what happens. So I will log in using my local Cognito user pool credentials, and let's go back to the CloudWatch logs, refresh it. So please refresh it because whenever you deploy, log stream gets created. So whenever you make any changes to the Lambda function and deploy it, a new log stream will get created. So make sure you refresh and check the latest log stream and not some old log stream, and that won't have the changes that you made. I see the event it's getting printed as is. So let me do one thing. Actually, let's change this to console.log instead of log and see what happens. Now again, go back to this screen, clear the cookies, log in using the local user profile or the AzureAD user profile, and again come back to CloudWatch. Now go to this parent tab. As I said, as I deployed a new version, it will a new log stream. So click this one. I maybe should ideally print the console.debug statement. So let's just see what happens. Yeah, looks like this is the latest one, but somehow it's not printing the event details. So let me actually try one more thing. I don't know if this is causing some issue. So let me remove this. Deploy. Again, I will log in using that same local user profile. And come back here, go to the CloudWatch log. Yes. I don't know why it didn't display. Maybe I just need to print console.debug of event. So now you can see what values are sent in that event. So I logged in as a local user profile with username testuser1. And you can see the username here in the event object. You can also see other user attributes like what is the subject ID of this user. So you go back to the screen, Cognito users, and click this one. You can see the same subject ID. You can actually search here. It's the same subject ID. And you can see other attributes of the user like name, given name, family name. So all these values are available to you in this particular Lambda function. So now let's try the same thing. Instead of the local user, I will log in as a, oh, sorry, I need to copy that app client again. So go to that same page, right click, view hoster UI, copy link address and paste it here. I will log in as AzureAD user. Let's see what attributes are available in that event object. So I logged in and I didn't deploy a new function, so the log should be available here. So just keep refreshing here and you should, it will be paste. So here I can see the user attributes for the user. I see the subject. Again, you can copy the subject with the subject in this users tab, the AzureAD. Just search. Yeah, it's exactly matching. And you can see other attributes of the user like the identities array and then something else. So in this way, like you can use the event object. So for example, print this identities. I want to use this identities array object, and based on some attribute in this identities array object, I want to add a claim. So how to get to this identities array is pretty simple. So just you need to, so this is the entire event object. So this identities attribute, JSON attribute is inside request.userattributes.identities. So let's just print it and see what happens. So request dot copy this user attributes and copy this identities. Deploy it. And we need to log in again. So again, go back to this integration tab and copy this, clear the cookies, let's actually log in using AzureAD IDP, because only a user who logs in using that external identity provider will have that identities array, not the local user profile. So let's actually go here. Since I deployed again, I should see a new CloudWatch log stream. So here I can see the identities array getting printed. So instead of printing the entire event object, I actually navigated to that identities attribute and printed only that identities array object. So now let's say we want to enhance this. I want to add a claim in the user ID token, which says what is the source IDP. So let's call it as source IDP, and I will set it as local by default. So a local means a local user profile is trying to log in, right? So if I log in using a local user profile, then the source IDP should be local. But if I log in using a AzureAD IDP, the source IDP should point to the AD IDP's identity ID. So let's write a logic for that. So for a local user profile, there won't be any identities array, whereas for an AzureAD IDP, there will be a identities array. So in order to do that, let's actually write a if condition. So like you can check if that identities object is undefined. So you need to use if type of not equal. These are basic JavaScript code. You can get it, you can check it in any JavaScript tutorials. So you need to just check if the identity object is not undefined. If it is not undefined, then set the source IDP value to. In this case, we will set it to that same identities.provider name value. So if you look at this identities object, there is a provider name value and it is an array. So we need to do a JSON.parse of that identities object. If it is not undefined, then if you do a JSON.parse of that identities object, you are going to get that array, JSON array object, and then do a zero index dot provider name. So copy this provider name and put it here. And now let's actually add this source IDP as a claim. So just add it as a new claim here and set it to that source IDP variable. Or let's call it a source underscore IDP and set it to that variable. So let's deploy it and see what happens. Again, I need that link, copy the link address, go here, clear the cookies. So let's first log in as a local native user, like a local Cognito user pool profile. And I logged in and I should be able to see that, yeah, I can see it here. So the source IDP is set as local. That is the default value of the table here. The source IDP is local. So now what happens when I log in using AzureAD IDP, because it will have an identity. Now log in as AzureAD IDP and using AzureAD IDP. And now let's see what happens to the source IDP value. Yeah. So the source IDP is now set to AAD IDP, which is the provider name in this log. So if you go back, check the latest log stream. So this is the provider name AAD IDP. So when I log in using a local Cognito user pool, the source IDP gets set to local, and when I log in using an AzureAD IDP, the source IDP gets set to AAD IDP. Now the client application can use this particular claim to identify whether a user logged in using a local Cognito user pool or using an AzureAD IDP, or let's say I have another IDP configured in my user pool like Okta. Then I can find out whether the user logged in using a local user profile or an AzureAD profile or an Okta profile. I can even enhance this business logic here. Like, for example, if the provider name is AzureAD, then I can add some additional claims. And similarly, if the provider name is local, that is, if a local user logs in, then I can add some additional claims. Similarly, if an Okta user logs in, I can add some other additional claims. So in this way, I can distinguish each user. So this is pretty helpful in a multi-tenant setup where you are building a product which is integrated with Cognito user pool, and then multiple customers are configured in that Cognito user pool through external identity provider configuration. And then when each customer logs in through that IDP, you can have what you say, some kind of a lookup table configured in your AWS account, like in a DynamoDB, and based on the provider name, you can look up that table and get some additional details from that lookup table and add it to the ID token claims. And then the client application, that is the product that you are building, which is the client application in this case, can then have business logic based on the customer details. So basically, you can get the customer details or some other additional claims related to that customer from a lookup table based on the provider name and add it to the ID token. And based on that, your product can show different UI, or it can show different functionalities or different features for that particular user who belongs to that customer. So this is a very simple example that I showed, but you can do lots of things because this Lambda function can be enhanced for business needs or requirements, and you can do many things. So at this point, you can only customize an ID token using this particular Lambda trigger. So, and you cannot customize the access token. So just keep that in mind. So you can only do all these things with the ID token. So this is how you can customize the ID token and make it like you can use it for in your multi-tenant architectures where, as I said, you have a Cognito user pool integrated with your product, which serves multiple customers, and all those customers wants to log in using their own identity providers, their own organization's identity provider. So you set up them as an external identity provider in your Cognito user pool, and then add custom claims in the ID token based on which user is trying to log in, which customer's user is trying to log in, and then you can do lots of authorization logic based on that, on the UI or based on the functionalities, all those things. So if you have any questions or comments, please post in the YouTube comments. I will be happy to respond. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thank you.